Students, today as you see we'll start data handling, that is chapter number 5. Now in this chapter we'll study the first thing. These are the contents I've written. The first thing, introduction. Second thing, representing data. Different types of graph we'll study, that is pictograph, bar graph, double bar graph, circular graph. Then we'll study frequency distribution table, drawing circular graph, and at last we'll finish the chapter with probability. Okay, now let's say your class teacher, okay, has to give report to a principal ma'am regarding the attendance for a week. Fine. So how exactly she will do or he will do? So this is the plan that she will work out. That is Monday, P for present, A for absent. Suppose the number of students is 40 in your class. So suppose on Monday 30 students were present and absent was 10. Tuesday 32 were present, 8 were absent. Wednesday 33 were present, 7 were absent. On Friday 31 students were present, 9 students were absent. Saturday 30 students was present and 10 students was absent. So this is the data that she has to give to the principal ma'am regarding attendance for a week, for a certain week actually. So this, whatever the numbers I have written, fine, these are all the datas. Fine. So data is what? Now, as because this chapter is all about data handling. So first thing we have to understand what is the data and how exactly we have to handle the data. That is how exactly we have to organize the data, how exactly the data would be represented via graph. So these are the things that we'll study under this chapter. So according to the first example that I've given, all the numbers, all the facts that which I've given regarding the students for a week, these are called datas. Fine. So these are very simple data. Data of 6 sets of data. 6 days data are given. So I have written 6 sets of data. So what is a data, student? Data is nothing. It is a collection of facts or information. Fine. That is when any information or any facts we collect, that particular form is called a data. Suppose a score of students in a class, or population of a state or a country. Fine. The wages of one particular industry, fine, of workers. So those are all a collection of facts or informations. Fine. So these are called data. Now the next topic that is very important, that is organizing the data. Once you have collected the fact or information, you need to organize it. Why to organize it? This is the biggest question that many person asks. Why to organize the data? What is the use of, what is the purpose of doing this? Now, what I've written, you see, managing the data or handling the data is important. That is, this is all about organizing. That once you have collected the fact or information, you have to manage it or you have to handle the data. It is important because it makes the fact or information more readable, more understandable. Okay, if you just if you do not handle or do not manage the data properly, then what will happen? The other person will not understand what exactly you have done, what exactly the data are all about, against what you have written the data. Okay, so that is the reason you have to organize the data very properly, so that not only you but the other person should also understand. That is, suppose one example. Suppose in a class there are some number of students are there. I have not written the name. I have related the name with some letters A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. Okay, so a student A has scored 75 students out of 100. The total marks is 100. So student A has scored 75 marks, B has scored 45 marks, C 70 marks, D has scored 70, E has scored 42, F 55, G 61, H 71. So this is a marks data for one particular subject out of 100. Now this is why we have to arrange this data in this particular form. This is called organizing the data in a proper way, because if we do this pattern, then we can answer many questions. Suppose if I ask how many students has scored less than 50 marks, then immediately we can work out on this thing and we can answer, that is 2 students. That is, if I ask in a different way, how many students have scored marks between 50 to 70, then in this case we'll say 5 students. How many students have scored more than 70 marks? Then what will answer? 3. So if you carefully check all this and in organizing data, this is also a type of organizing data, and this is also a type of organizing data. Fine. So this is how it helps. That is, it makes more easier to analyze, more easier to interpret. Okay, so that is the reason why organizing data is very, very important. Okay, now let's move on to the next part. The next part is representing data. Now, representing data, the first part is pictograph. Now, how to represent this data? This is the first thing that we'll study. It's called pictograph. Now, pictograph is a combination of two words, picto and graph. Picto means picture, graph. That means any data will be represented with the help of a picture. Okay, that is the reason it is named pictograph. Now, pictorial representation of data with pictures are called pictograph. Okay, now suppose in a class of 50 students, okay, our teacher is asking a question to each and every individual. So what is the question he is asking? What is their favorite fruit? Okay, now in that way, the response that he has received from the student side is that it is 10 student who loves apple, 20 student who loves orange, 5 students who love grapes, and 15 students who loves mangoes. So this is what the data this teacher has collected regarding his question. That is, what fruits do you like? So this is a data. Okay. Now, if I have to represent this via pictographs, what I have to do is that I have to draw one picture, and I will correlate this picture with a 5 students. Suppose I have drawn this picture which will represent a number of students. This is a student. So this one particular symbol represents 5 students. Okay, this one particular symbol will represent 5 students. Now, if I really have to ask that how many students admire or like apple, so if one symbol represents 5 students, so how many altogether how many students love apple? 10. So how many symbols would be there? 2. Fine. This is how to represent any data with the help of a picture. Now, orange is 20, and one symbol represents how much? 5. So 5, 5, 5, 5. So this will come up to 20 if you add it. Grapes, how many? 5 students. So one symbol represents how many students? 5. So how many symbols would be there? Only one, that is 5. Mango, 15 students. So how many symbols would be there? 3. So this is how we represent our data by a pictorial way, that is with the help of a picture. It's very, very easy. Okay, now let's move on to the next topic, that is representing data with graph. Now, what is a graph? First of all, we have to understand what is a graph. Now, a diagram that shows relation between the variable quantities. Now, what is the variable quantities? As you see that if we discuss the last example, that is when the teacher was asking what is your favorite fruit, so it could be that the first student have answered apple, again the second student answered apple, but the third student answered orange. Now you see the datas are not in the proper sequence, that is it will keep on changing. So that is the reason I have said that diagram that shows the relation between the variable quantities. So these are the quantities which keep on changes. Okay. So if you remember the data, see the apple was 10, orange was 20. So it was keep on changing, isn't it? So these data are called variable quantities. This keeps on changing. Okay, so based on this particular data, so we draw a graph. Now, how many types of graphs are there? So there are normally what you have to study is bar graph is there, line graph is there, pie chart or circular graph is there, double bar graph is there, tally mark is there, even histogram is also there. Fine. So these are some of the graphs which are there in your syllabus. Okay, so let's talk about the first graph, that is bar graph. Okay, so now if you see this particular line L shape, now we have drawn some rectangular shapes, isn't it? Now each rectangular shape is called a bar, and that is the reason this particular graph is called bar graph. Okay. Now this next one is line graph. So the same graph, when the same data is when it is represented in the other way, that is suppose one data is there like this, one data is given, you can represent this data by bar graph also with some rectangle places, and same thing can be represented with a line graph. In line graph you see we just give a point. Okay, we just mark a point and once we are done with all the marking, okay, we just joined it with the help of a scale and pencil. So this is what line graph is all about. So we'll study this once we are gradually grow with this chapter. Now this is a pie chart or a circular graph. Now in pie chart you normally see this is a type of a pizza. Okay, fine. So in a type of pizzas, we normally don't eat the whole part. We normally cut it like this, isn't it? So this is your part, this is your friend part, this is your another friend part. So what is the consumption? That suppose A has consumed 20% of the whole pizza, B has consumed the 10% of the whole pizza, the C has consumed 40% of the whole pizza. So normally pie chart is shown by percentage or degree. These are some of the values or the units that we use normally for pie charts. Okay, so we'll learn this. This is very, very interesting. The fourth one is double bar graph. Double bar graph is a compilation of when you compile the two graph together, two bar graph together, it forms a double bar graph. Now suppose in 2014, according to 2014 data of one particular class, number of students love apple this much, orange, this is what orange is all about. These are the students who loves orange. This is a data of 2014, and number of students love grapes, G for grapes, and banana this much. Okay, and same data when after just a very next year, after next years when the data are taken, it is seen that number of students love apple is this much, number of students love oranges is this much. Okay, so these are the data of consecutive years, which shows the likings towards some fruits, that is apple, orange, grapes, and banana. Now if I have to show the two datas together, that is the two diagrams together, there is where the double graph plays a very important role. So this graph, this you see, is a compilation of two rectangles. Okay, so it represents the details of 2014 also and 2015 also for fruit apple. So if you carefully observe that apple in 2014, the admiration part was much higher compared to the previous next year, that is 2015. In every cases you see that there is a declination, okay. So the